I've recently come out of a period of long-term stress. And I think I'm learning some things about that experience that I want to share. I've been learning a lot about serotonin versus dopamine. Really interested in my health and exploring this idea of what is serotonin has been important to me. So, serotonin is a neurotransmitter, and our body produces a lot of it when we do something that we don't want to do repeatedly, or we're put into a stressful situation and we're unable to get out of it. There's a really famous study on rats where they put rats in a situation where they had to swim for their lives, and it was a situation where they could not save themselves. They just had to swim, and there's nothing that they could do to help themselves. And they compared that to rats who were saved or were given a way to save themselves at some point. And so when they put them in the water again, they compared how long the rats could swim for before they gave up. And the rats that were put in a situation where they could not help themselves, where they could not get out of it, I think swam for a matter of minutes. And the rats who were able to help themselves swam for hours, some absurd number, like more than 10 hours. And the way that this ties into serotonin and dopamine is that when we're encountering those stressful situations, repeatedly stressful situations, serotonin will cause our bodies to contract, to slow down. It will slow our metabolism, and it creates this behavior of learned helplessness. So, conversely, when we're given a situation where we can do something about it, our bodies will give us dopamine instead as a reward. These aren't quite a seesaw between serotonin and dopamine. Serotonin contracts, dopamine expands. Dopamine makes us more coordinated. It makes us more open to new experiences. It makes us more curious to experience life, to do new things. But it's not like lowering serotonin will automatically increase dopamine. And it's not like lowering dopamine will automatically increase serotonin, though I do believe that increasing serotonin will decrease dopamine, and increasing dopamine will lower serotonin. So one thing I've been thinking about is this idea of a situation that you can't get out of. So imagine 1,000 years ago. Imagine early human history, which I know is way more than 1,000 years. Think of all the stressful things that you can encounter and the time horizon of how long it takes for that stress to resolve. So on the short end, there's a tiger, and it either eats you or it runs away. It's pretty short-term stress. Thinking longer term, you might have winter. Winter's a stressful thing. There's not a lot of food, but winter comes to an end. Or the longest time horizon that I can think of is a famine, which might last years, but in which case you can move. You can, if you're nomadic, you can go somewhere else and find the food. But in any case, a famine's not going to last more than a few years. Now compare that to modern day, where we have stresses that don't ever go away. There will always be traffic. You will always have to feed yourself in an economy where you are disconnected from the food itself. So you have to navigate a very complex situation. Maybe you've got children and you have to take care of them in an environment that doesn't make that easy. And so what I'm getting to is that our body's adapted with serotonin and these short-term stressors. And serotonin causes the body to contract. It causes the metabolism to slow down so that we can endure these stressful situations until they end potentially on their own. And I would imagine that usually these situations ended on their own. But we live in a time where a lot of these long-term stresses don't actually end unless you do something about it. And it puts us in the situation where you might contract to the point of not having enough energy to actually overcome the situation. And so having found myself in a very stressful situation over the last couple of years, mostly with my work, I've got a great job, but it's just been overwhelming sometimes. And wanting to find a way to have a phase change, an increase in my ability to manage it such that it's no longer so stressful. Being in this high serotonin state would lead to a lower ability to handle that stressful situation. And so I think finding myself in this really stressful situation, where my mind went to solving it was to save money, to get more resources. If I can't solve it with my own physical resources, which I was working on as well, then maybe I could solve it with financial resources, saving enough, investing. And I found that the more I saved, the less it actually created more worries for myself. So learning how to work with the stock market, there's a lot of variables, and obviously there's people who are very good at this and might come with confidence over time. But what I found was that the more I saved, it didn't really counteract the stress that I felt from my job, from the situation. And it got me thinking, like, what would actually make me feel secure in this situation? And I came to the conclusion that it's not really resources that would make me feel secure. I think about all of the cultures in the past who've had radical revolutions, where those who have had resources have had it all taken away. War could come at any moment and totally destroy everything that you've saved up for. Just no matter how durable something is, it's not totally safe. And so finding myself in that high serotonin state, that contracted state, resources wasn't really getting me very far. And I think what can get me far is what we talked about earlier, dopamine. I think, so dopamine, you get dopamine when you begin an action. When you're about to do something, it primes you to be open to the new experience, gives you energy, it makes you more coordinated so that you might be a little bit more successful in the activity. And I do believe it might improve your metabolism. I don't know, but I know how I feel when I have dopamine. When I begin a task, it's exciting, you're about to jump into something. And then you also get dopamine when you finish something. You get the biggest dopamine hit after you accomplish the goal, after you finish, you turn the paper in, you make your dollar, you hit your fitness goal. And dopamine will counteract that serotonin so that you can begin to live a more open, energetic life. So where am I going with this? That's a good question. I think the opposite of serotonin, I think the answer to that stressful state is not accumulation, but it's a life that's based more on dopamine, more on openness, more on activity and accomplishing things. And I don't mean grind hustle culture at all. What I mean is that you do the things that light you up. You do the things that give you energy, and you don't do the things that take it away. You avoid serotonin activities, you lean in towards dopamine activities, and I think it creates this snowball effect where you wake up and you're excited for the day and you have energy to handle whatever may come. Accumulated resources can be taken away so easily, but what can't be taken away is an ability to handle life as it comes. So another way to put that, I think, is the opposite of stress. The way that you potentially get out of a stressful situation is not hoarding, it's not contracting, it's not trying to endure, but it's confidence, it's openness, and it's energy. So how have I been leaning more into that? I think there are two ways you get dopamine. You get dopamine by starting something, and you get dopamine by finishing something. So lately, I've been, first of all, avoiding serotonin. Don't do the things that you don't want to do. And if you do have to do something that you don't want to do, figure out a way that you don't have to do it again. I think that's really important. The first step is conserve your energy. Don't let it leak out and be doing things that you don't want to do. And second, you choose activities that you know you can begin and that you know you can end, and you can be successful in some way or form. People talk a lot about setting achievable goals. I think this is the whole thing. You're picking a goal line that you can reach so that you get the dopamine, and then you have this spiral effect. You get more dopamine, you have less serotonin, you expand more, you get more confidence, and you can move up the ladder. And I think you bootstrap your way up from something really simple, such as making your bed or checking your mailbox, and you get all the way up to asking a girl out or building a new product or starting a business. My favorite example of how I've experienced this in my life is when I discovered that I had thinning hair. So I had a little bit of a bald spot, and I freaked out because suddenly I'm losing my hair. And I did a bunch of research, figured out how I could stop it. I used rosemary oil, and for about a month, maybe 6 weeks, I did this. And my next time going to my barber, he starts cutting my hair. He says, "What have you done?" Oh, there's a lot of flies. This is really weird. Is my audio still going? Hell yeah. My favorite example of how this balance between serotonin and dopamine works and how to progress is with my own hair. Earlier or late last year, I discovered that my hair was starting to thin. I noticed a little bit of a bald spot forming in the back of my hair, and I was pretty concerned. I didn't want to lose my hair. So I did research to figure out how I could stop it, how I could grow my hair back. And I discovered rosemary oil and scalp massage. And I did this for about 6 weeks. And I went back to my barber, and he commented first, "Your hair's growing back. What are you doing?" Gave me a ton of confidence to see that I had options. There's something that I could do about the situation. And oddly enough, I lost my motivation to continue regrowing my hair. And so I do it occasionally, but I think having a bunch of hair is like that trying to gather resources when you're in a serotonergic state. It's just something that you can lose. And I think it's important to save. I think it's important to gather resources, but when you have those resources, you can always lose them. What's more important than having those resources is having options, knowing that going bald, at least in my case, was an option. There was something I could do about it. And it gave me the opportunity to lean back and be a little bit more clear-headed. I think dopamine, that situation gave me dopamine because I did something about my situation. It gave me the confidence to know that I'm capable. And so I can make a clear decision. I can make a clear decision with, so in that case, I think dopamine brain is a clear-headed state where you can make good decisions based on what you're capable of, as opposed to the serotonergic state, this serotonin brain, where you're contracted and you're just trying to hold on to what you can to endure the situation. So I'm gonna keep practicing this. I've been in a really stressful situation for the last couple of years, and recently I've been avoiding things that I don't want to do. And when I have to do, I try to make sure I only have to do them once. So I'll hopefully document here how that goes.